The night was quiet. Too quiet. The twin moons hung above the alien city, casting cold silver light over the high towers and glass domes. Inside one of those tall palaces, a woman sat near the window, her face half hidden in the light. She was not an ordinary woman. She was a princess, an alien royal from the powerful house of Zira. And tonight she was a bride, but her heart felt nothing close to happiness. She called it a punishment to marry a human. Her name was Princess Lyra, known for her beauty and strength. Yet in that moment she looked small, fragile, and lost. Her silver hair fell across her face as she stared out at the city lights below. Her people had forced her into this marriage to end a war. A human man, they said, would be her husband, a symbol of peace. But to Lyra it was a chain around her heart. Behind her, standing in silence, was Ethan Voss, the human she had been forced to marry. A soldier once, now just a man caught in politics he never asked for. His eyes were tired but kind. He stood by the door, unsure if he should speak. He had seen war, blood, and betrayal. But this silence between them felt heavier than any battlefield. For a long time, neither moved. Only the faint hum of distant engines filled the room. Lyra finally spoke, her voice cold and sharp. "You think I wanted this?" she asked without looking at him. Ethan sighed softly. "No," he said, his tone calm. "I didn't want it either." That surprised her. She turned her head slightly, studying him from the corner of her eye. He wasn't angry. He wasn't proud. Just tired and honest. It confused her more than it should have. He walked toward the table, placed down a cup of water, and sat. "You can take the bed," he said quietly. "I'll sleep on the floor." Her brows tightened. "I don't need your pity, human." He looked up at her then, really looked. His eyes were not like the others she had met. There was no hate, no greed, no arrogance, only quiet strength. "It's not pity," he said. "It's respect." His words lingered in the air. She didn't know how to answer. Respect from a human? Her people taught her that humans were crude, selfish creatures who only understood violence and control. But this man, this human, seemed different. And that frightened her more than she wanted to admit. Outside, the wind began to howl. The palace lights flickered as a sandstorm rolled over the city walls. Lyra stood up, wrapping her robe tighter around her. She felt the walls tremble slightly. Ethan walked to the window and sealed the shutters. His movements were calm, steady, protective. "You don't have to do that," she said softly. He smiled a little. "Maybe not. But I don't like storms." For a brief moment they shared silence again, but it was not the same as before. It was softer. She caught herself staring at him, wondering what kind of human could look so peaceful in a place that hated him. When he turned, their eyes met, just for a second. But in that second something strange happened. She felt a faint warmth in her chest, like a heartbeat not her own. The air between them seemed to hum quietly, a strange energy passing through the room. Lyra's breath caught. She quickly looked away, confused. "What was that?" she whispered to herself. Ethan noticed her trembling hand. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded quickly. "I'm fine," she lied. But her heart was racing. That small moment, that simple look, it had shaken something deep inside her. When the storm outside grew louder, she sat near the fire pit while he built a small flame. Shadows danced across the walls, lighting his face in flickering orange glow. She watched him quietly, her mind torn between fear and curiosity. He wasn't what she expected. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't cold. He was human. But somehow that word didn't feel like an insult anymore. She whispered under her breath. "Maybe." Not all humans are monsters, but Ethan didn't hear. He was staring into the fire, lost in his own thoughts. After a long while, she stood and walked toward the window again. The storm had calmed. The moon shone through the thin clouds, silver and bright. Her reflection in the glass looked strange, half alien, half something else. Behind her, Ethan's voice came, low and tired. "Tomorrow will be better," he said. She didn't answer, but her fingers brushed the cold window pane. In her mind, she repeated his words. Tomorrow will be better. She didn't know if she believed it, but for the first time she wanted to. As the night grew deeper, she lay awake on the bed while he slept on the floor near the fire. The warmth from the flames touched his face. He looked peaceful, almost gentle. Lyra turned her head and whispered, "Maybe punishment isn't what I thought it was." Outside, thunder rolled across the dark sky. But inside that small room, something far more dangerous had begun, a feeling she could no longer control. The morning light crept slowly across the room, turning the cold stone walls into soft gold. Princess Lyra woke to silence. Ethan was already up. He stood near the small fire, packing his things with quiet focus. For a moment she watched him, his calm movements, his steady hands. It bothered her how peaceful he looked after everything, after being forced to marry someone who despised his kind. When he noticed her awake, he nodded politely. "Good morning," he said. She didn't reply. The words felt too normal for what they were, two strangers bound by duty, not choice. He placed a small tray beside her with food. "You should eat," he said softly. "It's going to be a long day." Lyra frowned. "You think I'll eat human food?" Ethan's lips curved slightly. "It's not human food. I cooked it from the alien grains you had brought here. See, I learned fast." His tone was calm, not mocking. That made her pause. She picked up a piece, sniffed it cautiously, and took a tiny bite. It tasted good, better than anything she expected from a soldier. But she said nothing. She couldn't admit it, not yet. Ethan moved toward the door, ready to go outside. But as he reached for the handle, Lyra noticed a deep cut on his palm, fresh, bleeding slightly. Her eyes widened. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing," he replied. "Just a scrape." But she couldn't look away from it. For reasons she didn't understand, her heart twisted at the sight. Before she could think, she stepped closer. "Let me see," she said quietly. Ethan hesitated but finally held out his hand. She took it gently, her fingers brushing against his skin.
And then it happened. A sudden wave of warmth shot through her body.
The room faded. Her mind exploded with light and sound. She saw flashes, Ethan's memories. A battlefield filled with smoke and blood. A small boy crying beside his dead parents. Years of pain, hunger, and loneliness, and then the day he stood before the council agreeing to marry her, to end the war, to save lives he didn't even know. Lyra gasped and pulled her hand back. Her breathing was fast, her eyes wide. What was that?" she whispered. Ethan looked confused, maybe even afraid. "What did you see?" "Your memories," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw everything. The war, the pain, your promise." He frowned deeply. "That's impossible. Humans can't share memories like your kind." But Lyra knew what she had felt. She had touched his soul, his truth. There was no hate in him, no hunger for power. Only sorrow and kindness. She stepped back, shaking her head. "This can't be real," she whispered. Ethan clenched his wounded hand, still staring at her. "Maybe our bond isn't normal," he said quietly. "Maybe it's something neither of our people understand." His words echoed in her mind. She looked at him again, this time not as an enemy, but as someone carrying unbearable pain behind calm eyes. For the first time, she felt guilty for calling him a punishment, for believing all those lies about humans. Outside, thunder rolled again across the horizon. The sandstorm from last night had returned, stronger this time. The palace trembled under the wind. Ethan moved to secure the door, but Lyra was still standing there, lost in her thoughts. When he turned, she was staring at him with strange eyes. Soft, searching, afraid. "What's wrong?" he asked. I saw your heart," she said. "You never wanted this war. You never wanted me to suffer." He said nothing. He just looked at her, and that silence spoke louder than words. Suddenly, a crash echoed from outside. The window cracked under the storm's force. Lyra flinched, and without thinking, Ethan reached out, grabbing her by the arm, pulling her close to shield her from the flying glass. Her body froze against his. His touch, warm, strong, protective, sent shivers down her spine. She could feel his heartbeat against her own, steady and real. When he let go, she didn't step back. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper.
"Why did you protect me?"
Ethan blinked. "Because you're my wife now." That's what I promised. Something broke inside her. All her anger, her pride, her fear, it began to melt. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not her guards, not her people, not even her father. She turned away quickly, hiding her face. "You're a fool," she said. "Maybe," Ethan replied gently. "But I'd rather be a fool than a monster." His words hit her heart like a quiet storm. As night came again, the wind outside finally died. The palace was peaceful once more, but her thoughts were not. She sat by the fire long after he slept, staring at her hands, the same hands that had touched him and seen his soul. She whispered softly into the empty air, "Maybe I was wrong about humans. Maybe I was wrong about him." Outside, far away in the dark sky, a small drone watched through the window, its red light blinking. Someone else had seen that touch, that closeness. Someone who would not forgive her for feeling what she now felt. And deep inside her chest, where the warmth of that moment still lived, Lyra realized something terrifying. Her heart had started to betray her people. The next morning began with an uneasy stillness. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed in pale light. Princess Lyra stood near the window, watching the people below move like ants across shining streets. Everything looked calm again, yet inside her heart there was a storm still raging, one she didn't know how to silence. She had seen the human's memories. She had felt his pain. She knew now that Ethan was not the monster she had imagined. But that knowledge scared her more than anything else, because what she felt when she touched him was not only pain, it was connection, a deep, dangerous connection she wasn't supposed to have. Ethan entered the room quietly, carrying a tray of breakfast. "You didn't sleep," he said softly. She didn't turn. "Neither did you." He smiled a little. "I'm used to sleepless nights." For a moment, they just stood there in silence. Then she said something that made him pause. "When I touched you yesterday, I saw your past." He froze, his expression unreadable. "So it was real?" "Yes," she whispered. "I saw everything. The war, the loss, the promise you made." He lowered his eyes. "Then you know why I agreed to this marriage?" "Yes," she said slowly. "To save lives, even mine." The air between them grew heavy with words unsaid. Lyra wanted to thank him, but her pride held her back. She was a princess, her people's symbol of strength. She couldn't afford to show weakness, especially not to a human. Yet something inside her longed to. When Ethan stepped closer, she didn't move away. "There's something strange about our bond," he said quietly. "When you touched me, I felt something too, like your thoughts brushed against mine." Her eyes widened. "That's impossible. Only bonded pairs of my kind can share thoughts." "Maybe," he said, "but I felt your fear." Her lips parted slightly. "You felt that?" He nodded. "You were afraid of losing control." His words struck deep. How could he know? That was the truth she had buried since the day this marriage began. She was afraid not of him but of herself. Afraid that one touch, one look, could break every wall she had built around her heart. Before she could speak, the communicator crystal on her wrist began to glow faint blue. She turned quickly, hiding it from him. "Excuse me," she said, stepping into the next room. The hologram flickered to life, revealing her younger sister, Seren, dressed in royal armor. Her face was pale and worried. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Seren's voice was sharp. "The council has been watching you. They say you've broken the first vow." Lyra frowned. "What vow?" "The vow of distance," Seren whispered. "You're not supposed to bond with the human. You were ordered to marry him for peace, not for love." Lyra's heart skipped. "Love?" she repeated, her voice trembling. Seren's eyes narrowed. "You're changing, sister. The way you look at him, it's dangerous. If the council confirms your emotions, they'll end the treaty. They'll end him." The words hit like ice. Lyra took a step back, shaking her head. "No, they wouldn't. They will," Seren said coldly. "And they'll make you watch." The hologram vanished, leaving Lyra staring at the empty air. Her chest felt tight, her throat dry. She turned toward the doorway. Ethan was standing there. He had heard everything. "You were spying on me?" she said sharply, trying to hide her panic. He shook his head slowly. "No, but I heard enough." Lyra looked away, guilt and fear mixing inside her. "You don't understand, Ethan. They will kill you if they think I care for you." He stepped forward. "Then stop caring." She met his eyes. "You think it's that easy?" "No," he said quietly, "but maybe pretending will keep us alive." His calm voice cut through the air. She wanted to hate his logic, but it was true. The council had eyes everywhere. She had seen their cruelty before. One wrong step, one careless word, and Ethan would be gone. For the rest of the day, they barely spoke. Lyra tried to act cold again, distant and proud, but inside she was breaking. Every time she saw his gentle smile, every time he said her name, she felt the bond pull stronger. That night, when the city lights dimmed, Ethan sat near the fire, cleaning his old rifle. He looked up at her and said, "You should rest." "I can't," she said quietly. "Why not?" "Because every time I close my eyes, I see what I shouldn't feel." He put the rifle down and walked toward her. "What do you see?" She lifted her gaze to him, her eyes shimmering in the dim light. "You," she said. For a long, breathless moment, neither moved. The air between them was heavy, electric. Ethan's hand lifted slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers barely touched her skin, but that touch sent fire through her veins. Lyra's heart pounded. She wanted to step away, but she couldn't. She whispered, almost pleading, "Don't." He stopped, lowering his hand. "I'm sorry." She closed her eyes, her voice trembling. "No, I'm sorry." Outside, unseen by them, the council's drone hovered near the window again. Its red eye blinked once, recording everything, the closeness, the forbidden touch, the look that spoke louder than any confession. The message was already being sent to the council chamber across the stars. "The princess is compromised. Initiate removal protocol." Lyra felt a sudden chill, as if the universe itself had heard her heart betray her, and for the first time she realized her greatest enemy was not the human she had married, but the love growing inside her. The night after the council's drone recorded them was heavy with silence. Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lyra's face, her fear, her softness, her confusion. He knew she was trying to fight something deep inside her, and so was he. But what she didn't know was that he was hiding something too. Something dangerous. Before dawn, he quietly got dressed and slipped out of the palace. The streets were still half asleep, the air filled with the faint hum of floating transport pods. Ethan walked fast, his cloak pulled tight. He knew the city guards watched humans carefully. He wasn't supposed to leave without permission, but he had learned to move unseen. Lyra woke an hour later to find the room empty. His blanket folded, his gear gone. A sudden worry filled her chest, something she hated to feel. "Why do I care?" she whispered to herself, pacing near the window. But the unease wouldn't leave her. The memory of his touch, his calm voice, his quiet eyes, it all haunted her. Unable to stop herself, she wrapped her cloak around her shoulders and followed. Outside, the morning sun painted the sky pale blue. The city of Valora shimmered beneath layers of energy glass and floating bridges. She stayed hidden under her hood, moving through narrow lanes, her heart beating faster with every step. Finally, she saw him. Ethan was standing near the cargo docks, speaking with a group of rough-looking traders. Lyra hid behind a metal column, watching carefully. He handed them a small box. One of the men scanned it and nodded. Then Ethan gave him another container, this one marked with the symbol of the Alien Medical Guild. Lyra's eyes widened. She recognized that mark. It was medicine meant only for her people, restricted by human law. He was smuggling it, but why? She stepped closer, just enough to hear his voice. "Make sure this reaches the refugee camps in the southern dunes," Ethan said. "The children there are dying." The alien trader frowned. "You'll be executed if they catch you helping us, human." Ethan shrugged. "Let them try." Lyra's heart pounded. He wasn't selling the medicine. He was giving it away to help her people, to save lives, the very lives her council had abandoned. When the men left, Ethan turned and saw her standing there. His eyes widened in shock. "Lyra." She stepped out slowly, her voice trembling. "You're helping them?" He sighed, realizing the truth couldn't be hidden now. "Yes, why?" she demanded. "They're the same people who call humans invaders. Who would kill you if they had the chance?" "I know," he said quietly, "but I've seen enough death, Lyra. I'm not fighting for sides anymore. I'm fighting for lives." His words struck her heart like a pulse. He wasn't lying, she could feel it. He was risking everything, even his own kind, to do what was right. She stared at him for a long moment. "You're a fool," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "I've been called worse." Before she could speak again, a loud whir filled the air. A patrol drone flew overhead, scanning the area. Ethan grabbed her hand and pulled her into the shadows. She gasped as they pressed against the cold wall, his arm around her waist. The drone's red light swept past, missing them by inches. When it was gone, they both stayed still, breathing heavily. Their faces were close. Too close. She could feel his breath, his heartbeat, the warmth of his body. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" she whispered. He smiled slightly. "Not today." But deep inside, Lyra knew something had already changed. He wasn't just her unwanted husband anymore. He was someone who had chosen mercy over hate, someone she couldn't stop thinking about. Later, they returned to the palace, pretending nothing had happened. But the silence between them was different now, full of unspoken feelings. Every glance held meaning, every touch of the hand felt electric. That night, as Ethan worked quietly at the small desk, Lyra sat by the window, lost in thought. Finally, she spoke. "All this time I thought humans only knew war." "But you—" He looked up. "What about me?" "You fight for peace," she said softly. "Even when it costs you everything." Ethan gave a sad smile. "Someone has to." A moment of quiet followed. Then Lyra asked, "If your people find out you're helping mine, what will they do to you?" He didn't look away. "Execute me," her breath caught. "Then why keep doing it?" "Because I can live with death," he said, "but not with guilt." The firelight flickered across his face. For the first time she saw not a human, not a soldier, but a man with a heart brave enough to fight alone. And deep down, she knew she was falling for him. But far above them in the dark sky, a signal traveled across the stars to the alien council that ruled her world. Target confirmed. The human has interfered in restricted zones. Termination authorized. Back in the room, Lyra turned to Ethan, unaware of the red light blinking outside their window once again. She whispered, almost afraid of her own words. Maybe punishment was never the marriage. She looked at him, his calm eyes, his tired smile. "Maybe it's what I'd feel if I ever lost you." And as the night deepened, a silent promise formed between them, one that neither side of the galaxy would ever allow to exist. The wind began to howl again that evening, low and hungry like a living creature outside the palace walls. The night sky turned orange with the reflection of lightning, and the twin moons hid behind the thick clouds. Princess Lyra stood by the balcony staring at the horizon. The air felt heavy, tense, as if the world itself was holding its breath before something terrible. Ethan walked into the room carrying a small crate of supplies. His clothes were dusty, his face tired. "The city guards say another storm is coming," he said. "Stronger than the last one." Lyra didn't turn around. "How strong?" He looked out the window beside her. "Strong enough to bury everything outside the walls." Thunder rolled in the distance. A faint vibration ran through the floor. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them was no longer full of hate or fear. It was full of everything they didn't dare say aloud. Finally, Ethan broke it. "We should head to the lower levels before the storm hits." Lyra's eyes stayed on the dark horizon. "I don't like hiding," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "Then stay close to me and we'll call it something else." The moment hung in the air like a spark. Then another blast of wind hit the glass, cracking one of the windows. Lyra jumped back in surprise. Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her away just as the glass shattered into the room. The wind screamed through the opening, throwing papers and dust everywhere. He held her close, shielding her from the flying shards. "Come on," he shouted over the roaring storm. He pulled her toward the hallway, his hand gripping hers tight. The lights flickered, the air filled with static energy. Guards ran past them, shouting orders, trying to seal the palace gates. But the storm was faster, stronger. They moved down the narrow corridors until they reached an old part of the palace. The walls there were cracked, the doors sealed long ago. Ethan kicked one open, revealing a small dome-shaped shelter from the ancient wars, half buried, half forgotten. Inside, it was dark and cold. Dust covered the walls, and the sound of the storm outside made the ground tremble. He found a box of emergency lights and switched one on. Soft blue light filled the room. Lyra stood near the entrance, her hair tangled, her breathing fast. "Are you all right?" he asked, watching her carefully. She nodded, though her voice shook. "You didn't have to protect me." He smiled gently. "You always say that, but I always will." Her eyes softened. For the first time, she didn't argue. She sat on one of the metal benches, staring at him in the dim glow. The air between them felt strange, quiet, but alive. Ethan lit a small heating lamp in the corner. "We might be here a while," he said. "Storm this size could last through the night." Lyra looked at him, her voice low. "You seem used to being trapped in dangerous places." He gave a small laugh. War teaches you to get comfortable with fear. She tilted her head. Do you still fear anything? He hesitated, then said softly, losing people I care about. Her breath caught for a second. Those words hit something inside her, something she had tried to bury since the day they met. She wanted to say something, but instead she stood and walked closer to him. You think I'm one of those people? She asked. Ethan looked up slowly, meeting her eyes. I don't think, he said quietly. I know. The world outside raged like a beast, but inside that small shelter everything went still. Lyra's heart raced. She could hear the rain slamming against the walls, feel the floor shake. But all she saw were his eyes, calm and kind even in chaos. Why do you always risk yourself for me? She whispered. Because somewhere along the way, he said softly, I stopped seeing you as an enemy. Lightning flashed outside, lighting up the room for a second. In that white light, their faces were inches apart. Her silver hair shimmered, his jaw tense, both breathing fast. Neither moved. Then the light faded and the thunder crashed. The noise startled her, and without thinking, she reached for him. Ethan caught her hand and pulled her close. The storm outside was violent, but inside something gentle bloomed. They stayed that way for a long time, neither speaking, just listening to the world break around them. Her head rested against his chest and his arms slowly relaxed around her shoulders. It was a strange peace, fragile but real. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice trembling. Ethan, if they find out what I feel, what we've done, they'll kill you. He smiled faintly. Then I'll make sure they don't. You can't fight them all, she said. Maybe not, he whispered, but I'll die trying. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't understand why his courage hurt so much to witness. No human she had ever known would face death with a smile. Outside, the storm began to fade, its voice growing distant. But before peace returned, a faint red flash appeared through the cracks of the shelter wall, a moving light. Ethan noticed first. He stood quickly, grabbing his weapon. Lyra frowned. What is it? He stared through the small crack in the wall, his face darkening. Not lightning, he said grimly. They've found us. Lyra's blood ran cold. Who? Ethan turned toward her, eyes hard. The Council's assassins. And as another thunderclap shook the air, the red light outside split into three, silent, deadly beams moving toward the shelter. Lyra stepped back, fear and anger flooding her chest. For the first time she understood. This storm wasn't just nature's fury. It was a warning. Their secret had been discovered. And now the real storm was about to begin. The storm outside had turned into a whisper, but inside the shelter, tension filled every breath. The faint red lights flickered through the cracks in the wall. 3 glowing dots slowly moving closer. Ethan's hand tightened on his weapon. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. They found us, Ethan whispered. We have to move, now. Lyra stepped beside him, trying to stay calm, though fear gripped her like ice. The Council sent them, she said quietly. They must have been watching us this whole time. Ethan glanced at her. You mean since the day we met? She nodded slowly. Since the day they forced this marriage. They wanted peace, but they also wanted control. And now they think I failed them. Another red light swept across the doorway. Ethan pulled her into the shadows, pressing his back against the cold metal wall. The shelter's weak light flickered once and died. Only the faint hum of the storm outside remained. Stay behind me, he said in a low voice. Lyra shook her head. No, they're after me. If I go to them, maybe they'll let you live. Ethan turned sharply. Don't say that again. She blinked, surprised by the edge in his tone. I didn't marry you to watch you die, he said quietly. Not even if this was all forced. Before she could answer, the door exploded inward. Smoke and sparks filled the room. 3 dark figures stepped through, their armor gleaming in the blue emergency light. Their eyes glowed red, just like the drones. Princess Lyra of Zira, one of them said coldly. By order of the High Council, you are under arrest for treason. Lyra straightened, her fear melting into fury. Treason? She shouted. For what crime? For feeling. The lead assassin ignored her words and raised a weapon. Ethan didn't hesitate. He fired first. The room burst into flashes of light. The sound was deafening. Lyra dropped to the floor as the first shot hit the metal wall behind her. Ethan moved fast, his body between her and the attackers, returning fire. He hit one, sending the figure crashing against the wall, but the others kept coming. One of them threw a flash grenade. It exploded in a blinding burst. Lyra screamed as the light seared her vision. When the smoke cleared, Ethan was bleeding from a cut on his shoulder, but he was still standing, weapon raised. "Ethan," she shouted, reaching for him. "I'm fine," he yelled back. "Get to the back exit." She stumbled toward the narrow hallway at the far end of the shelter, but before she could reach it, a metal beam fell from the ceiling, blocking the path. Sparks flew as it crashed into the floor. Trapped, the assassins closed in. Ethan stood his ground, his jaw clenched. He had faced soldiers, mercenaries, beasts, but never this kind of fight. This was personal. "Leave her," he shouted. "She's done nothing wrong." The leader sneered. "She touched the forbidden. She broke the vow. And you," his voice dripped with disgust, "you corrupted her." Ethan fired again. The blast hit the assassin's armor, but it barely dented it. In one swift move, the attacker raised his arm and shot back. The beam grazed Ethan's side, throwing him against the wall. He groaned but didn't fall. Lyra ran to him, kneeling beside his wounded body. "Ethan, stop! You'll die!" He looked at her, his eyes full of pain but still steady. "Then I'll die fighting." She felt tears burn her eyes. The world outside was chaos. The world inside was breaking apart, and the one person she wasn't supposed to care for was bleeding because of her. Her blood boiled. Something ancient awoke inside her. A power her people had long forbidden. Her eyes began to glow faint silver. The assassins hesitated, seeing the sudden surge of energy in the air. Lyra raised her hand and the ground trembled. A shockwave burst from her palm, throwing the soldiers back against the wall. The air rippled with light, crackling like thunder. Ethan stared in shock. "Lyra, what are you doing?" She stood slowly, her hair floating around her like silver fire. "What I should have done a long time ago," she said. Her voice was calm but deadly. "You call me traitor for feeling. Then let me show you what real betrayal looks like." With a flick of her wrist, another wave of energy erupted, sending the assassins crashing through the broken doorway and into the storm outside. The wind swallowed their screams as lightning split the sky. The shelter shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra fell to her knees, breathing hard. The glow in her eyes faded. Ethan rushed to her, pulling her close. "Hey, stay with me," he said, his voice trembling. "You used too much power." She looked up weakly, tears mixing with dust on her cheeks. "They'll come back. The council won't stop until one of us is dead." "Then we don't stay here," he said firmly. "We run." She wanted to argue, but her strength was gone. He lifted her in his arms and carried her out into the storm, the sky roaring above them. Behind them, the old shelter collapsed into the ground, buried under falling debris. As they disappeared into the night, a lone drone hovered above the ruins, recording the chaos. Across the stars, in the grand chamber of the High Council, the old alien leaders watched the footage in silence. "The bond has become real," one of them said coldly. "Then the girl must be erased," another replied. "And the human? He will be made an example." Back on the desert road below, Ethan looked at Lyra sleeping weakly in his arms. Her silver hair glowed faintly under the moonlight. He whispered softly, "They can call us traitors, monsters, anything they want, but they'll never take you from me." And somewhere in the storm, unseen eyes watched them, the council's eyes cold, endless, and waiting for their next move. The night sky above the desert was burning red from the lightning storms. The wind carried the taste of metal and dust. Ethan moved slowly through the wasteland, his boots sinking into the soft sand with each step. In his arms, Lyra lay weak, her eyes half open, her silver hair brushing against his chest. They had been running for hours since the attack. The council's assassins would not stop until they were both dead. The world that once looked like peace was now a battlefield again. "Just hold on," Ethan whispered. "We'll find shelter soon." Lyra smiled weakly. "You can't protect me from them forever, Ethan. They have ships, armies, laws." He looked down at her, his face hard but calm. "Then I'll fight laws too." She wanted to laugh at his foolish courage, but her voice broke. "Why do you always say things that make me want to believe in impossible things?" "Because," he said softly, "impossible things are all I've got left." They reached an abandoned outpost near the edge of the dunes, metal towers half buried in sand, lights long dead. Ethan pushed open the door and carried her inside. The air was still and cold. He set her down gently and started searching through broken crates for medical supplies. Don't move, he said. You're losing strength fast. Lyra closed her eyes, breathing slowly. You shouldn't have come for me. You should have left when you had the chance. He stopped and looked at her. I had a chance? Her lips curved faintly. Once, the day you could have walked away and saved yourself. He shook his head. That day never existed. A sound outside broke the moment, metal scraping, boots on sand. Ethan's body went still. He grabbed his weapon and turned toward the door. The faint red glow returned, brighter now. They found us, he whispered. Lyra tried to stand, but her legs failed her. You can't fight them alone. I'm not alone, he said quietly. You're with me. Before she could answer, the door exploded open. 5 armored figures entered, their eyes glowing crimson beneath their helmets. The leader stepped forward, voice cold as ice. By order of the High Council, both of you are sentenced to death for treason and contamination of royal blood. Ethan raised his weapon, eyes sharp. You'll have to earn that sentence. The room erupted in fire and noise. Blasts of plasma tore through the air, sparks flying off the walls. Ethan dove behind a fallen beam, firing back. The sound of the storm outside mixed with the battle cries inside. Lyra crawled toward the center of the room, clutching a broken power core. She could feel the energy inside it, a dangerous, unstable surge. She had one chance. Ethan, she shouted. Get down! He saw what she held and his eyes widened. No, Lyra, you'll kill yourself! She smiled sadly. Then we'll die together. She slammed her hand against the core. A blinding wave of white light exploded from the center of the room, throwing everyone back. The ground shook. The air screamed. When the light faded, the assassins were gone, burned away by the blast. Ethan crawled to her side, coughing through the smoke. Lyra lay still, her eyes closed, her body glowing faintly with silver light. No, 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 he whispered, holding her close. Don't do this. Stay with me. She opened her eyes slowly, her voice weak. I had to end it, Ethan. They'll keep coming. They'll never stop. He shook his head, tears mixing with dust. Then we'll run again. I'll take you anywhere, just don't leave me now. Her hand brushed his cheek gently. You changed me, she whispered. You made me see that love isn't weakness. It's power. Lightning flashed through the cracks in the roof, painting her face in silver light. She smiled, small and peaceful. Promise me something, she said. Anything. Don't let them tell our story their way. Tell it yours. Tell them why we fought. Ethan held her tighter. I promise. Her eyes fluttered closed and the silver light around her faded. The room fell silent except for the wind outside. Ethan stayed there, holding her body in his arms until the storm finally died. When dawn broke, he stepped out of the ruined outpost, carrying her wrapped in his jacket. The desert stretched endlessly before him, glowing under the morning sun. Above, the sky was quiet, no drones, no ships. He found a small dune overlooking the valley and laid her to rest there. A single piece of metal from her armor marked the spot. Then he stood, looking toward the horizon where the council's capital waited far away. His eyes burned with a new fire. He whispered, You called it a punishment, Lyra, but it was the only thing that ever made me human. He turned and started walking. Every step he took left a mark in the sand, a trail of rebellion. He wasn't running anymore. He was going back. He would face the council. He would tell their story. He would make sure the galaxy knew that an alien princess and a human soldier had dared to love when no one else would. Far above, the wind carried his last words like a whisper through the endless dunes. She called it a punishment. I called it the beginning. And as the twin suns rose, the light touched her resting place, glowing brighter, as if the universe itself remembered their love.